Da tror jeg vi kan begynne å tenke på å starte denne Ig Nobel-kvelden. Så før jeg skal gi ordet til Marc Abrahams, som på en måte Mr. Ig Nobel her, så tenkte jeg vil ønske alle velkommen. Jeg veldig glad for at det så mange som har tatt seg turen hit og vil delta på dette arrangementet. Og jeg også veldig glad for at vi har fått denne kvelden til UiO, for at på UiO her så har vi jo egentlig en lang tradisjon for Ig Nobel. Vi har jo allerede 3 vinnere via Egil Reimers, som skal på scenen om litt. Men vi har jo også Halvor Teigen og Harald Moi da. Og det er noe som vi er veldig stolt av, i hvert fall det. For at vi som jobber på universitetet, vi er jo på en måte i bransjen for å finne unike ideer, og som iblant også krever veldig kreative løsninger. Og Ig Nobel synes jeg representerer det på en veldig, veldig fin måte. Og hvis jeg kan bruke et ordtak fra Dr. Andrew Game, som kanskje er en av de mest utmerkede vinnerne, siden han er både en Ig Nobel og en Nobelpris, så sa han en gang at folk som ikke har en god sans for humor, er ofte heller ikke gode forskere. Så jeg vet ikke om det stemmer, men om det skal være det, så er vi i hvert fall veldig, veldig fint besøk her i dag da. Så med det så tenkte jeg skulle ønske alle velkommen, og så vil jeg overlate ordet til Mr. Ig Nobel, Marc Abrahams. Yeah. So Marc, the word is yours.
Thanks. Great, thanks. Can you hear me okay? Okay. If there's any difficulty hearing or anything, just say something or throw something, please. I'm going to show you lots of things about the Ig Nobel Prizes, and then we're going to meet some actual living Ig Nobel Prize winners. Okay? Just as a preview of coming attractions here, I will ask each of our speakers now to simply stand up and take a bow so you can see who's coming in what order. Wonder if we could ask somebody outside to ask the music to either stop playing or turn it down. That would be great. Thank you. All right. I will not explain these people now, but they will explain themselves a little later. So after the saxophone stops, and after I give you an introduction to the Ig Nobel Prizes and show you some things, we will then meet Egil Reimers, after he explains or tries to explain what he did and why he did it, we will meet another Ig Nobel Prize winner, Andrea Rapisarda. Okay. And Andrea has come today all the way from Sicily to join us. And then we will have somebody who, at the moment, I will introduce only as a mystery guest. But do notice, if you could stand up for another moment, do notice the mystery guest does have lovely hair. I'm not mentioning that just because she has lovely hair, but because that lovely hair plays a role in what she will be talking about. And our final speaker of the night, our final Ig Nobel Prize winner, is Elisabeth Oberzaucher. Lisa has come all the way today from Vienna, Austria, to join us. Okay, you can see that, you can see me, you can hear this. The Ig Nobel Prizes are prizes. We started this 25 years ago. The prizes are unusual. They are for things that make people laugh, then think. That's it. That's the only criterion. It's for things that make people laugh, then think. We give 10 of these prizes a year. Before I say anything else, I'm going to show you a short piece of video. This is from the Ig Nobel Prize ceremony several years ago. This is the acceptance speech from one of the Ig Nobel winners.
I will give more details during my MIT lecture on Saturday, but it is important to mention that it takes only 25 seconds for average woman to use this protective personal device. 5 seconds to remove, convert, and apply her own mask, and 20 seconds to wonder who the lucky man is she's going to save. Well, the times of naivety and unpreparedness have passed. We have learned to accept risk. And we have learned to appreciate preparedness and prevention. That's why I always wear convertible bra mask. And when I am here next year, I hope every woman in this auditorium will also be wearing one. Thank you very much.
And now I believe we have a demonstration by the inventor.
I would like to ask for 3 volunteers, preferably Nobel laureates, to assist me in demonstration. I have a suggestion. If you are going for an event like Ig Nobel, where you can actually get surrounded by more than one Nobel laureate, you better have more than one bra.
I hope you will agree that that deserves some kind of prize. That was several years ago, but that gives you a little taste of what it's like at the Ig Nobel ceremony. The winners are kept secret until the moment they're introduced on stage. I'll tell you a little bit about how it works. Anybody can send in a nomination. We get every year about 9,000 new nominations for Ig Nobel Prizes. Every year, consistently, between 10% and 20% of all those nominations are people who nominate themselves. Those self-nominees almost never win. This quality, things that make people laugh then think, that's a side effect. It's almost impossible to create that if that's your main intention. It's important to know that in almost all cases, when we have selected somebody or selected a team to win an Ig Nobel Prize, we get in touch with them quietly and we offer them the prize quietly. We give them the opportunity to decline this great honor if they wish to. And I'm happy to say that almost everybody who is offered a prize decides to accept. So I'll show you a little bit of what happens at that point. This is our logo. You probably recognize it. It's based on the statue by the sculptor Rodin, which is usually called the Thinker. We call our version the Stinker. Our organization is called Improbable Research. By improbable, we mean not what you expect. Whatever you're expecting from these things, it's probably very different. That's the quality we always look for. We have a magazine that is quite old now, comes out 6 times a year. It's called the Annals of Improbable Research, where we write about things like this. I have a feeling we have written about several people in this room, or we will be writing about several people in this room. And again, this is our criteria for everything, things that make people laugh and then think. If you win an Ig Nobel Prize and you accept it, here's what you get. You get an Ig Nobel Prize. This is the prize we gave out this year. Every year for the ceremony, we choose a new theme. This year, the theme was life. And as you can see, this reflects, in a certain sense, life. It's the 4 of the most essential elements common to life. And one of our Ig Nobel Prize winners this year looked at this and said, oh, that's a chemist's tree. You also, and these are handmade every year. It's a new design every year. It's always made of extremely cheap materials. You also get a piece of paper that says you have won an Ig Nobel Prize. And this piece of paper is signed by several people who have Nobel Prizes. It's a nice piece of paper to have. There's a tradition that sprung up among many of the Ig Nobel winners that they take this paper home and they put it in a nice frame under glass, and then they hang that in their home right above their toilet. Most prizes in the world also give money. They give cash. Now, we don't have any money, so we were never able to give money to the winners. And yet, a few years ago, we figured out a way to do it. And now each of the winners, or each of the winning teams, gets cash. They get quite an impressive amount of cash. Each winner gets $10 trillion. They get a $10 trillion bill from Zimbabwe. If you are not familiar with the recent financial history of the country of Zimbabwe, I suggest you ask anyone sitting nearby and they will be happy to explain it to you. By the way, the person responsible for printing these $10 trillion bills also was awarded an Ig Nobel Prize in mathematics several years ago. His name is Dr. Gideon Gono. He was at the time the head of the National Bank in Zimbabwe. And under his direction, he had the bank printing up bills in the denomination of $10 trillion and even higher. The highest was, you could get a single bill in the amount of $100 trillion. And at that same time, he insisted that the bank also print up bills with a face value of 1 cent. And he had a reason for doing that, which he explained. He wrote a whole book to explain it. He said that when you're spending large amounts of money like this, you still need to make change. That's an Ig Nobel Prize winner speaking. If you win, you are also invited to come to the ceremony. It happens in this building. This is at Harvard University in the US. This is in the oldest and biggest meeting place at Harvard. It's the biggest classroom at Harvard also. It's a theater as well. Same space. It fits 1,100 people. On Ig Nobel Night, it's always filled. People buy tickets and come from around the world to be in the audience. Journalists come from around the world. We have been webcasting it for 21 years now. We were almost the first event of any kind to webcast anything way back when, 21 years ago. And up on the stage, waiting to shake the hand of the Ig Nobel Prize winners and hand them, physically present them with their Ig Nobel Prize, are several Nobel Prize winners. This photo was taken a few months ago at the most recent Ig Nobel ceremony. The 5 people on the left all have Nobel Prizes. One of them also, you see, has a paper airplane that she's about to launch. And the gentleman on the right is a past Ig Nobel Prize winner who came back to take a bow. We invite all of the Ig Nobel Prize winners to come back whenever they like and be on stage to take a bow. His name is Dr. Nakamatsu. He is from Japan. He is the most prolific inventor in the history of Japan, maybe of the world. He has 3,500 patents. But he won his Ig Nobel Prize because at the time we awarded his prize 10 years ago, he had taken a photograph of every meal he had consumed for the previous 34 years. Now 44 years. And there's a tradition of paper airplanes. The audience started this in the 2nd or 3rd year and continues this every year. I'll show you a little piece of video from the ceremony.
The countdown begins in T-minus 7 seconds. T-minus 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, commence!
You probably have very little idea what's involved in cleaning up after 1,100 people have spent 90 minutes throwing paper airplanes. It's an impressive problem to solve. We used to have a problem that we solved, an important problem, that I'm sure you have suffered from many times. It happens at many public occasions where there are lots of people giving speeches. You know the problem. Everybody is told, please keep your speech very short, but they have a lot to say, and pretty soon it's a long night. We solved that problem. Here's how we solved it. As you know, we used to have a problem at this ceremony. Many of these speakers would exceed their allotted amount of time. Here's how we now solve that problem. Please welcome the charming, the delightful, the ever so cute Miss Sweetie Poo. Miss Sweetie Poo is 8 years old. Miss Sweetie Poo, would you demonstrate what you will do when somebody exceeds his or her allotted time?
Please stop. I'm bored. Please stop. I'm bored. Please stop. I'm bored.
Thank you, Miss Sweetie Poo.
Stop.
Now, Miss Sweetie
I'm
Poo.
bored.
Thank you, Miss Sweetie.
Stop.
Now, Miss Sweetie
I'm
Poo.
bored.
Thank you, Miss Sweetie Poo.
Please stop.
Thank you, Miss
I'm
Sweetie Poo.
bored.
Thank you, Miss Sweetie Poo. All right, that works. The heart of the ceremony is when we introduce the winners, and there are 10 winners, so we introduce them. But between those times, we also do a lot of other things very quickly. And every year, one of the things that happens in the ceremony is the win a date with a Nobel laureate contest. Each of the 1,100 people who has a ticket and is physically present has a chance to win a date with one of those Nobel laureates. This is a photo taken this year. This was our 25th year, so we thought we should do something special. And so we had a sort of 2-for-1 sale. Instead of winning a date with one Nobel laureate, if you were the winner, you got a date with 2 of them. Okay, and they won their Nobel Prize together, so they work well together. This photo was taken just moments before the winner was chosen at random from the audience. And the prizes here, you can see, are looking out into the audience, wondering who will win a date with them. And then this was taken moments later. This is the audience member who won the date, and she's now climbing up onto the stage to collect her prize. You may be wondering, What's the story with the man painted silver? And although you can't quite see it because the top of the photo cuts it off, he's holding a flashlight there. He is what's called a human spotlight. He illuminates the proceedings. His name is Jim Brett. He has a PhD from MIT, from the engineering school. Jim Brett has invented many things in his life, but to my way of thinking, he has invented two great things. First, he invented this concept of the human spotlight. We always have two of them, a man and a woman, at the show. And then after that, a number of years ago, Jim Brett is one of the people who invented something called 3D printing, three-dimensional printing. Okay, same guy. And this next photo was taken a few seconds later, at the moment that this person is collecting her prize. And every year, we write an opera, a little opera, a mini opera about something in science. It's performed by professional opera singers and by the famous scientists who are on stage. Usually we give them a special but non-singing role in this. I'm going to show you about a minute of video from the latest mini opera. I'll tell you the plot and you can see what happens in the middle that I'm going to show you. Our theme this year, remember, was life. And the name of the opera was The Best Life. In the opera, there's a big international competition that's organized, and it's going to be televised live worldwide. It's, in a sense, the greatest and biggest game show of any kind in history, where all of the species of life, all of the millions of species of life, from the largest to the smallest, will be brought together, and one species, just one, will be chosen as the best species of life. That's the heart of this thing. And the opera is what happens as they organize it and try to hold the competition. And they get all these species together, and then on the day before the actual competition to choose the best species of life, they have a little rehearsal and sort of party where they, in one room, gather every species of life. Think about that. Every single species of life, all gathered in one place. It's never happened before. The organizers are up there, you'll see at the start of this minute, with a list of all the species, and they're looking around this gigantic room and just checking off on the list to make sure each of these species is there. And they're very proud and very happy. And then they notice what's happening. Think about what might happen if you were to gather every species and put them together in one room. It's not pleasant. And you're going to see the moment right in the middle of the opera when the organizers, happily counting all the different kinds of species, notice what's happening among those species.
And E. coli,
nematodes and nautilus, asparagus and aardvarks, tickleweed and tapeworms, hollyhocks and
hogs,
platypus and peanut worms, and redwoods and rubella, artichokes and anthrax, fireflies and frogs, barracuda, legionella, leeches, magus mites, and mongoose, palms and pubic
I
lice.
see some octopi eating some orioles.
Are they still hungry? Those octopi are hungry all the
I
time.
see some ocelots eating those octopi.
I see some mallard ducks. I see some kitty cats. I see those mallard ducks assault the
I
cats.
see mosquitoes
Eating
fighting mosquitoes. So many things are eating other things, and other things are eating them.
And it gets a lot worse from there. And I'll tell you what happens in the rest of the opera. The competition is never held because most of the species are no longer alive. And of course, there are lawsuits. And the very end of the opera is a big parade of lawyers into the hall to deal with all these lawsuits. And there's a judge, and there are the two organizers who were there sitting in chains. And the judge decides what happens. The judge finds that they are guilty. And the judge then, having found that they are guilty, sentences them. He sentences them to, remember our theme is life, he sentences them to life in prison. You can see the whole ceremony, including the opera, up on our website, on improbable.com. I want to mention two past Ig Nobel winners, which I will mention later. I forgot I put them later in the slide. So I'm going to go quickly through the most recent crop, the 10 Ig Nobel Prize winners who won the prizes recently. And then I'm going to tell you about two more recent, not so recent ones. The Ig Nobel Chemistry Prize this year was awarded to a large team from Australia and the United States for inventing a chemical recipe to partially unboil an egg. They published this study called Shear Stress-Mediated Refolding of Proteins from Aggregates and Inclusion Bodies. And it's really two teams that joined up, one from Australia, one for the US. And here are parts of both teams on stage at the moment they were introduced to the public to collect their prize. The Ig Nobel Physics Prize was awarded to a team from the USA and Taiwan for testing the biological principle that nearly all mammals empty their bladders. Okay, everybody knows the word bladders? In about 21 seconds, plus or minus 13 seconds. They published this study called Duration of Urination Does Not Change with Body Size. This is some detail from the study. It's largely an exercise in fluid dynamics. This is a portion of an elephant. And here are the winners accepting their prize. This is at the moment they are being physically presented the prize. The man with the toilet seat over his head is David Hu, the leader of that research team. And sometimes I am asked, did you force him to do that? No, we don't force anybody to do anything, and the toilet seat was his idea. The Ig Nobel Literature Prize was awarded to a team from Australia, Belgium, the Netherlands, and the USA for discovering that the word huh, or its equivalent, the word is slightly different in Norwegian, isn't it? Huh? They discovered that the word huh, or its equivalent, seems to exist in every human language. And they were also honored for not being quite sure why. They wrote a paper about it called Is Huh a Universal Word? And they...
Huh?
That was a little explanation that they sent. You probably want to see that again. Right? This is the winners explaining their work. Right, here it comes again.
Huh? Huh?
We gave a prize this year in the field of management. It's not a prize, it's not a category that we often use, but we have done it once or twice. This year, the Ig Nobel Prize in the field of management was awarded to a team of 3 people who between them represent about 6 or 7 nations. They were honored for discovering that many business leaders developed during childhood a fondness for risk-taking when they experienced natural disasters, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, wildfires, that for them had no dire personal consequences. This is the paper that describes that work. It's called What Doesn't Kill You Will Only Make You More Risk-Loving, Early Life Disasters and CEO Behavior. And here are two of the team at the ceremony at the moment they step through the sacred curtain to meet the world. The Ig Nobel Economics Prize. I should mention that most of the Ig Nobel winners come to the ceremony at their own expense, by the way, since I remind you we have no money, but most of them are good enough to come at their own expense. But that's not true often of the Economics Prize winner, because often the winner of the Economics Prize has a previous engagement that keeps them locked up for 5 to 15 years. This year, the Ig Nobel Economics Prize was awarded to the Bangkok Metropolitan Police, to the police department in Bangkok, Thailand, for offering to pay policemen extra cash if the policemen refuse to take bribes. This is the leader of the police in Bangkok. The Ig Nobel Medicine Prize was awarded jointly to two groups, actually to an individual doctor in Japan and to a team in Slovakia. When they came to the ceremony, they began by explaining to everybody that you probably don't know which little nation we come from. Slovenia, Slovakia, there are so many. That was what they said. So those are all the joint winners, and I'll explain to you what they did, because you can describe it concisely. What the two groups did, they were totally independent, did not even know about each other. They all did experiments to study the biomedical benefits or the biomedical consequences of intense kissing and other intimate interpersonal activities. This is the study done by the group in Slovakia. What they did was take samples of saliva from the mouths of some people before those people kissed, and they analyzed the DNA in the saliva, and then they had the people kiss intensely for, I believe it was 15 minutes. And then they took samples from each of their mouths. What they discovered was that they say that after that, you cannot tell whose DNA you've got. Which is sort of interesting. Think back to all the criminal cases you read about in the news and you see on television and in movies where they take a saliva sample to identify the DNA. And if they've been kissing, you don't know whose DNA the tests indicate. That was one group. Now, the doctor in Japan was doing something slightly different. He published 3 papers. One of them was about kissing. Now, he's a doctor who deals with skin allergies. So what he was measuring was what happens when you take a very allergic person, you give them the substance that they react to, and then their skin erupts. What happens if you first have them kiss intensely for 30 minutes before you expose them? That was in one experiment, and also in a second experiment. The third experiment, he did the same thing, but it didn't involve kissing. It involved something else. So he had them have sexual intercourse before he exposed them. And what he said he discovered is that the couples that had these intense physical activities did not react nearly so strongly to the thing that they were allergic to. So here is the team from Slovakia. At the moment they're receiving their Ig Nobel Prize. And the doctor from Japan also gave us a little video that he thought people would want to see to show how he works in Japan.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am Hajime Kimata from Japan. I am honored to be awarded the Ig Nobel Prize and appreciate it very much. I wish that people will understand the new effect of kissing and also hope that kissing will bring not only love but also attenuation of allergic reaction. I look forward to meeting all of you. Thank you very much.
These experiments I have just described have yet to be replicated, so if anybody here wants to do that, please let us know. We asked the audience immediately afterwards in the theater if they would like to help honor these winners, and so many couples in the audience stood up. This was being televised live worldwide, and there are also a lot of photojournalists there, so photos of a lot of these people appeared on news sites the next day. The Ig Nobel Prize in Mathematics was awarded to the team of Elisabeth Oberzaucher and Karl Grammer from Austria. They do their work in Vienna. They were honored for trying to use mathematical techniques to determine whether and how Moulay Ismael the Bloodthirsty, the Sharifian Emperor of Morocco, how he managed during the years from 1697 through 1727 to father 888 children. Okay. Here is the paper. Dr. Oberzaucher is here and will explain this herself in some detail. I would ask her again to just stand up and take a quick bow so everybody can... And I suppose I should mention that there's a pretty good chance that several people in this room are related to Moulay Ismael. This is the gentleman in question. So look around, see if you see any familiar faces. And here is the winner at the Ig Nobel ceremony delivering her acceptance speech. The Ig Nobel Biology Prize was awarded to a team based in Chile. They won for observing that when you attach a weighted stick to the rear end of a chicken, the chicken then walks in a manner similar to that in which dinosaurs are thought to have walked. They published this paper called Walking Like Dinosaurs. Chickens with artificial tails provide clues about non-avian theropod locomotion. That's some detail from the published paper. The paper also included a little piece of video. And when the winners came to the ceremony, they seemed to feel that the people in the room might have a little difficulty understanding the technical aspects of this work. And so they demonstrated.
So now the table is more vertical and the movement happens at the head. Thank you.
The Ig Nobel Prize in Diagnostic Medicine. This is a new category. Sometimes when we've chosen something to win a prize, There is no category that describes that thing, and we have to invent a new category. This was such a case. The Ig Nobel Prize in Diagnostic Medicine was awarded to a large international team that's based in the UK, based at Oxford in England. They were honored for determining that acute appendicitis can be accurately diagnosed by the amount of pain evident when the patient is driven over speed bumps. They published this paper in the British Medical Journal. It's called Pain Over Speed Bumps in Diagnosis of Acute Appendicitis, Diagnostic Accuracy Study. The doctors as a group all flew over from England to attend the ceremony, and they insisted on demonstrating in their own fashion how to do this. This is a rare photograph of a British doctor with a speed cone on her head. And something interesting that happened. One of the people on stage that night, in fact, it was the other human spotlight. It was the woman who was painted silver and acting as a human spotlight. She's a college student in Boston, in the US. 2 weeks after this ceremony, she was driving her car when she suddenly felt intense pain whenever she went over a bump. And she remembered what had happened here. She drove herself to a hospital and her appendix was removed. So this may have saved her life. And the 10th prize that was awarded, the final prize that was awarded this year, was given jointly in 2 categories. This was another one, another achievement that we could not describe under any existing category. So we joined together 2 categories. Physiology, okay, the study of the body and how it works, and entomology, the study of insects. I'll give you just a moment to ponder the possibilities. The prize was awarded jointly to 2 individual scientists. And what they did was similar, but not identical. One of them is young, one of them is much older. They knew about each other. They had never met until the Ig Nobel ceremony, but they knew of each other and admired each other's work. One of the prizes went to Justin Schmidt for painstakingly creating what's called the Schmidt Sting Pain Index. This rates the relative pain that people feel when they are stung by various insects. That's one of the winners. He shared the prize with somebody named Michael Smith. The co-winners are Schmidt and Smith. What Smith did, Michael Smith, he's a graduate student at Cornell University in the US. He carefully arranged for honeybees, a single species. He arranged for honeybees to sting him repeatedly on 25 different locations on his body so he could learn which locations are the least painful. That turned out to be the skull, the middle toe tip, and the upper arm, and which locations are the most painful, which he says are the nostril, the upper lip, and the penis shaft. I will remind you, he had himself stung repeatedly in each of these locations. This is Justin Schmidt's paper in which he introduced the Schmidt Sting Pain Index, and this is Michael Smith's paper about honeybees stinging him on 25 locations on his body. This is some detail from that paper. And here are the 2 winners giving their acceptance speech at the Ig Nobel ceremony. If you look carefully, you'll see little Miss Sweetie Poo is 8 years old, and you'll also see a number of other girls and women surrounding her. This was our 25th year, I mentioned, and something else we thought we should do to make this celebration special is to invite back all of the previous little girls. And they're all there. The original Miss Sweetie Poo is now about 26 years old. She's a tall, willowy blonde. She's a nurse. They were all there. And for this final speech of the night, which did go on a little bit, all of the Miss Sweetie Poos came out together and acted together. Before we meet the Ig Nobel Prize winners who are here, who are going to explain their work, I want to tell you quickly about two of the previous Ig Nobel winners. Now, there are a lot of them. Remember, we've been doing this since 1991. 25 years, 10 winners a year. This is just two of those. A couple of years ago, we gave the Ig Nobel Prize in medicine to some doctors who published this paper, which explained how they treated a difficult patient. The patient had a nosebleed. It was a nosebleed that would not stop bleeding. The doctors tried everything they knew to stop that nosebleed, and nothing worked. In desperation, they looked and discovered mention of an old technique that sounded crazy to them, but they were desperate. So they tried it, and it worked. It saved the patient's life. And it's known as the method of nasal packing with strips of cured pork. They take some cured pork, some bacon, and they stuff it up the patient's nose, and that stops the bleeding. This is their paper. There are some older papers. If you go on to PubMed or any of the big databases, you can find some papers from the 1920s and 30s describing this. But apparently nobody had been using that technique all this time. Now it's known. The next picture I'm going to show you was taken at the ceremony right after the doctors gave their speech. We thought we should, because this is an important thing that could save the life of somebody, and most doctors don't know about it, we thought anybody who hears about this is in a position possibly to save some lives. So this is a demonstration we had on stage with one of our people of how this works. This was another moment when all the photographers from Reuters, the Associated Press, AFP, and all of them got pictures of this moment. And the next day, this moment was on news sites all around the world. And we think this is probably the high point of this man's life. Now, we still believe that this could save some lives, and that we know most doctors don't know about this. So now that you know about this, you are in a position, if you see this, to alert a doctor, or even in an emergency, perhaps try to administer the treatment yourself. And so that you will understand how this is done, we thought we should have a demonstration. And of course, this works best if we have a living person demonstrate it. And so I would like to ask for a volunteer from the audience to come up and help demonstrate this. Or two. Are there one or two people in the audience? This is your chance to save lives. Thank you. And is there perhaps one more? Oh, you're not volunteering. You have a cup of coffee. Would you like some bacon, some raw bacon for your coffee? We have a volunteer. Two volunteers? Okay. Andreas, I wonder if you would come up and help. If you could extract a piece of bacon. Yeah, thank you. And I want to thank you and shake your hand before you do this. Okay. So you understand how to apply this? Would you like Andreas to apply it, or would you like to do it yourself? I recommend you do it yourself.
I'm not sure if I want to do it myself. Can you do it?
Left to right.
Before he does, in case you don't know Andreas, he is a professor of mathematics here at the university. And mathematics is considered a field that not many people outside understand. So you may have asked yourself, what exactly does a mathematics professor do? Thank you very much. and for you. Okay. Thank you very much for that. And I'll show you quickly one other past winner of the Ig Nobel Prizes. The Ig Nobel Prize for Biology in the year 2003 was awarded to the author of this paper. This is the first scientifically recorded case of homosexual necrophilia in the mallard duck. And as you can see, the title of the paper is The First Case of Homosexual Necrophilia in the Mallard. It happened in the outside the Natural History Museum in Rotterdam in the Netherlands, and it involved 2 ducks. And the scientist happened to be there when this occurred. He heard the loud crash when the ducks first met. One of the ducks was killed flying into the side of a building. That was what drew the scientist's attention to this bang sound. And as he was watching, a second duck flew in and landed next to the dead duck and began engaging in activity. And so the scientist got his camera and his notebook, and he recorded what happened over the next 75 minutes. Okay. If you want to see the details of this, go to our website. You can download the paper. But even better, the scientist who did this did a TED Talk a couple of years ago. And he has the dead duck. They collected that. It's now in the museum. And he brought that to the TED Talk. So you can see this. All you have to do to find it is go and Google TED Talk Dead Duck. And that will find it. This is the museum. B, in case you're curious, B is the approximate spot where the first duck flew into the building and died upon the collision. A up top is where the scientist's office is. That's where he was sitting when he heard the noise of this. And when he looked out the window and saw it, C is the office he moved down to so he could be closer to the action and photograph it. So that is a quick look at the past Ig Nobel Prize winners. I do want to mention that every 2 months we come out with a new issue of the magazine where we write about not just the prizes but lots of things from around the world in every field that are improbable, that have this quality. This is real research, all fields, things that make people laugh and then think. And if you encounter anything you think the world should know about, please don't just tell your 2 best friends. Also send us the citation or a copy of it. Let us know so we can share it with the world. I'll just give you a quick look at what the magazine looks like. Every year, one of the issues is a special issue about that year's Ig Nobel Prize winners. On the cover from this one a couple of years ago is a team from Japan that won the medicine prize. They say they discovered that you can prolong the life of heart transplant patients by singing opera music to them if those heart transplant patients are mice. This was their acceptance speech. Every issue is a special issue on some topic. One issue recently was on teeth. One was on clever inventions. This is a possibly clever invention. We had a special dogs issue and a special cats issue. And every week we also have a podcast in which we have scientists doing dramatic readings from some of these studies. You may think that most scientific papers are written in very dull language. And if you think that, you are correct. But there are a few that have some very interesting passages, and those we collect, and we have them performed by scientists and actors. And that's what's in the webcast. And you're invited to join us at the next Ig Nobel ceremony. It will be on September 22nd at Harvard in the US. If you cannot come and physically be there, you can watch the live webcast. We hope you will. And who knows, maybe somebody in this room will be winning an Ig Nobel Prize. So that's basically what we're doing. Now we're going to meet our Ig Nobel Prize winners. To help them keep their speeches to reasonable length, we've asked each of them to prepare a 15-minute talk. But we don't want them to have to worry about how much time is passing. We want to help them know. So we need some volunteers. And I understand we have some special volunteers over here who are going to help us. If you could come and sit here. Yep, here. And face the audience. Thanks. And we're going to ask everybody here to help. We're just here to help the speaker. It's going to be 15 minutes, and what we're going to do is every time 3 minutes has passed, we want to let them know in some polite way. So these two scientists are going to keep track of the time. You have a way of doing that, and when the person begins speaking, then you start. And every 3 minutes, you will notify them and all of us. And we're going to do it by using that word that was involved in one of the new prizes, that word, huh? Okay? So after 3 minutes goes by, could you please hold up one finger, each of you? And when you see that number, that's the number of times that please everybody say, huh. So after 3 minutes, you will do. Okay. After another 3 minutes, you hold up 2 fingers. You say, huh. Okay. After another 3 minutes. Okay. After another 3 minutes. Okay. And you do this, and when it reaches 15 minutes, you hold up all of your fingers and start saying, huh. And do not stop until the speaker stops. Okay? Thank you for this. Our first speaker is from the University of Oslo. He was awarded an Ig Nobel Prize a couple of years ago for some work done in the far north. He and his colleague, he can describe his work far better than I can. Please welcome Egil Reimers.
Thank you.
Okay.
This is moving?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I'm going to tell you this story, which we experienced in Svalbard in 2006. Svalbard, as you see, a little island up north, high Arctic, with the species rangifer, which you see down there. And the location where we did the study was a small island, or rather big island, I would say, east of Svalbard archipelago. This island, EDGEØYA, is 5,150 square kilometer, and it is an important denning area for polar bears. In this area, you have Svalbard reindeer, which lives a very relaxed type of life, as you see from the belly. They don't have to run around, and they are out without insects, without humans, or stressing humans, insects, or predators. And even very, very comfortable with human beings. Opposite the wild reindeer in southern Norway, Rondane, born to move. So we asked the research question, vigilance of reindeer in predator-free environment. How often does an animal that is eating or grazing look up and scan its surroundings for 10 seconds? If it starts over 10 seconds, then the animal is doing something different. Then it's starting to scratch himself or doing something which has nothing to do with alertness. And then the second one was to measure fight and flight behavior in reindeer disturbed by human, or what distances would a reindeer pick up in order to avoid to be frightened by a human. Base camp with a bit too close warning defense, and unfortunately we didn't bring enough string to widen it, so when the explosive went off, those explosives are on the sticks. Of course, several times we didn't see them and they blow up. Measuring what we did with the flight and fight responses was simply to move towards the animals and then record when the animals discovered us. And then move on. Until the animals were alerted, we measured that distance, and then when they took flight. And finally, we went on to the place where they started the flight to measure how far they moved after being fired. So what we did see was quite surprising. Males, barren females, and lactating females. On Nordensjøland, which is the other part of Svalbard, where the main city, Longyearbyen, is located, it was quite different vigilance, much smaller, which means it is something different in southern Norway, the blue one, and EDGEØYA, which is the island we're working. So in some way, EDGEØYA was a situation where the animals really were alerted much, much more than anticipated. So why are Svalbard reindeer in EDGEØYA twice as vigilant as Svalbard reindeer on Nordensjøland? That was the one. And why are they equally vigilant as wild reindeer in Rondane, exposed to predators and humans and everything? It's environmental changes since I was in EDGEØYA in '76, and worldwide protection of polar bears. That means you have an increased population of polar bears, more open water and less ice in the Arctic, more polar bears on land, and more frequent interaction with the reindeer, which is supposed to be indifferent to Svalbard, to polar bears. At least that's what we had in mind when we visited. So, is it a peaceful interaction, or is it a predator-prey relationship? We discovered fairly long distance in the middle of the island that polar bears had been, and in this case it was hidden there. It's long distance photographs, so we won't see it. But a few days before, it's been a group of reindeer with calves. So suddenly the polar bear has moved in and replaced the reindeer. So we decided to find out what the problem could be. So this is my sister, located here. It's and this, as you see, an astonishing similarity. And action, of course, we didn't have all that white clothing because most of our work we had to really try to use all our fantasy in order to find whatever we could use as disguise. My back couldn't be disguised because of lack of toilet paper, but nevertheless, the way to handle it was to move towards the animals in a way like this, and even down on the floor, which was a fairly difficult position and very hard to handle for a long time. So on and off, I stood up and made this in order to seem frightening. So what we discovered, and here you see we have only one polar bear, and in all statistics, N-leak1 is a problem. But we added this guy's numbers 5, which means we had the minimum sample to compare. And as you see, a person moving towards the animals and measuring the distances is very much lower than when we disguised as the polar bear, and the one polar bear we did measure. So, co-author Sindre and backup gun on duty and off duty. And finally, I want to thank the Ig Nobel Board of Governors and field assistants Kristin and Mikkel, located here. The journal Arctic, Antarctic and Alpine Research for courage to publish this out of mainstream biological experiment. And finally, a polar bear that did not bother to pursue a strange-looking guy. And I still have 1 minute, I think.
That was wonderful. And we're going to take a few questions. If you have any questions about this, just please raise your hand.
In the meantime, I can show you the full outfit.
Okay. Are there any questions? Okay. So everybody hear the question. What was the most difficult reviewer question on this paper?
You can't publish this because that's going to destroy all our environmental protection problems. Then suddenly the polar bear would be an enemy to a protection area.
Other question? An assistant, a vital part of this, is here. Would you mind standing up and taking a bow? If you ever want to disguise yourself as a polar bear, this is the person to consult.
I should maybe also end up this with, it was one situation in which I was moving towards the animals and doing the fright and flight measurements and getting close to the animal which left, and we had to move right up to the place where we started the provocation. And then I was down on a slope, and I couldn't see what was happening behind the animal. And then suddenly on the radio I had the signal, Egil, return immediately, it's a polar bear coming towards you. And in such situations you never make jokes about polar bears, so I understood it was serious. And I unwrapped myself as quickly as I could because I wouldn't be mixed up with the polar bear. and escaped on foot as fast as they could, but it didn't discover me.
I have just one question for you.
Okay.
Was it mating season at that moment?
Yeah, close to.
Good. Egil Reimers. We only have time tonight for 3 Ig Nobel Prize winners, but I'd like to at least introduce you to another Ig Nobel Prize winner who is based here at the university. Just ask him to stand up and take a bow. He won his prize for doing research, thank you, to try to understand why people sigh. Please welcome Carl Teigen. Is there a microphone? Yeah, could you switch this on? Here, find the button. Professor Teigen has very kindly offered to, as the world's leading expert on sighs, he has offered to sigh for us tonight.
I never did this to an audience, but I feel like. Thank you.
If you need any advice on sighing, he has office hours. Let's see. Our next Ig Nobel Prize winner, as I mentioned earlier, has come all the way from Sicily tonight. He and his colleagues, they're physicists. They won an Ig Nobel Prize a few years ago for doing some mathematical simulations which indicate that organizations, any kind of human organization, perform better if it promotes people at random. Please welcome Andrea Rapisarda.
Thank you. Okay. Good evening. In these 15 minutes, I'll try to convince you that random strategies are a good thing. And we got this prize in 2010, and working mainly on the Peter principle. So I'll try to explain you. This is the team. This is my colleague Alessandro Pluchino, who is a physicist, and this is Cesare Garofalo, who is a social scientist. And this is our acceptance speech. So the problem is the following. Suppose that you have a hierarchical organization and you have a vacancy in this organization. So who should you put in that position? The common answer is usually that you take the best at the lower level and promote to the higher level. But is this strategy always the best one? Suppose that you have a team and you have a vacancy in the role of a forward player. Would you ever put your best goalkeeper as a forward player? Of course not. But this is what people usually does in management. So, and Peter realized this in the 60s. He wrote a very successful book and then gave the name to this principle because he realized that very often there is no correlation between one level and the other one. So if you promote people, it's not sure that this guy will be as clever as he was, as smart as he was at the lower level. And actually, the principle goes like that every new member in a hierarchical organization climbs the hierarchy until he or she reaches his level of incompetence. So, and in fact, the book is Peter Principle, Why Things Always Go Wrong, and you can imagine why. So what happens, according to Peter, is that people usually are promoted because they are the best at their level, but then they very soon become incompetent. And so when they finish their career, they finish at a level of the minimum of their competence. And there is also a corollary, which is that in time every position tends to be occupied by employees who are incompetent, and all the work is done by employees who are below you. When we started this work, we started for fun, of course, because this book was reprinted in Italian, and we started for fun to try to invent a model to simulate this mechanism and see if this was true. And so we invented this very simple model, a hierarchical group in which there were people, agents, which had an age distributed with a certain Gaussian distribution with a competence and a responsibility according to the level. And then we imagined two different hypotheses. The common sense one in which you actually maintain your competence with a small random variation, and then the Peter hypothesis, in which every time you promote an employee, you give again, in a random way, a new competence. So, and then there were different strategies that you can adopt. The best, you can promote the best, you can promote the worst, or you can promote in a random way or in an alternate way. And of course, you, as a physicist, want to know in a very quantitative way that the efficiency, I want to estimate the efficiency of your organization. So we thought that this could be a very simple way of estimating the efficiency. You sum overall the competence on a level, you multiply by the responsibility, and you normalize. So this is the efficiency of our organization. And what we discovered actually is that it is, as Peter thought it was, it means that if there is no correlation between one level and the other, then when you finish your career, a 3-level career, or 4-level careers, 5 or 6-level career, then you always are in a minimum of your competence. So Peter was right, actually, but then we had to solve also this problem. And so we invented, inspired by many physical examples, we invented this way of random promotions. And we could see here, you see that either in the common sense hypothesis or in the Peter one, that means either if you maintain your competence or if you do not maintain it, if you promote in a random way, you always get an increase in your efficiency, and also in an alternative way. While it's not this way if one hypothesis or the other is working. So this is our result, which deserved apparently this prize, but although it could seem paradoxical, actually there are many examples, one in physics, for example, stochastic resonance, in which a small noise helps to have a periodic behavior. Or there is another example in game theory, in which if you play two biased games in an alternative way or in a random way, you get a winning strategy. And also in biology, because in natural selection, you have mutual random mutations, which can give you an advantage, and in that case they are maintained. So this random promotion is something that works and has been working for ages, but apparently it seems quite paradoxical in management. So the story goes like that when we start this project and then ended it, we put it online and we went on vacation. But we didn't think that it could stimulate so much noise. In fact, it was immediately noted by several blogs, and also the New York Times reported about it. And there were some papers on popular magazines. And then it was also nominated as one of the most interesting ideas in 2009, just before publication this. And then we got the Ig Nobel Prize in 2010, just after publication. So, but the point is that the paper then became really popular. And we were a bit scared because, was this result robust or was only a particular case? And in fact, we repeated our simulation with different models and with bigger sizes and different topologies of networks, and also giving some small percentage of randomness. But you always see an increase in the efficiency of your organization. So the result is very robust. And then there is a second example. We applied this to politics, and especially to elections. This didn't get the prize up to now. But okay, it goes in the same direction. And actually, we discovered that in order to have a very efficient parliament, you should put, together with elected people, someone who is chosen in a random way from population. This was published, actually. And it's an old story, actually, because... okay. Herodotus, for example, said that Persians, when they had to take a very important decision, first took it when they were drunk. and then they discussed it again when they were not drunk. And if they took the same decision, then this decision was taken in a definite way. So it's a kind of technique which mathematicians and physicists know very well, which is called Monte Carlo method. But in politics, it was used since the beginning. Democracy, when it was born in Athens, there were no parties. I mean, people were chosen just by lot from the population, from all the men which were willing to be in the assembly. And this method continued also in the Renaissance. Many cities were run this way, and Venice, for example, lasted for 500 years in this way, with a mixed method of election and sortition, because it was a way to reduce the power of very rich families. And there are also modern examples. We have in trials public juries, and also Iceland, for example, changed its constitution in a similar way. So, I mean, this is continued, and it has some scientific, actually, base. In fact, we found that you can really improve. This is a way to increase the efficiency of your parliament. I have no time to explain exactly why, but I can answer to some answer. I mean, and we also find a formula that replicates the numerical simulations. But the last thing I want to add is that we apply this also to finance in trying to see if random investment had a benefit also in finance. And actually it is like that. And it has been recently found, for example, by this CAS Consulting, that if you apply in a very long period a random kind of investment, then you perform much better than real experts. This is a serious study. And I have no time to explain in detail, but actually this work of us has been found interesting by some really experts. For example, this Andy Haldane, which is the executive director of the Bank of England. And so the take-home message is that a bit of randomness can really improve our life. Please apply this. Thank you.
Nice. Any random questions? Your choice. Yeah. Yeah, the question from an Ig Nobel Prize winner is, in selecting the Ig Nobel Prizes, one of our traditions is that on the final day when we make our decision, we go out on the street and we select somebody at random to help make the decision. So, yes. More questions?
Well,
could you repeat the question?
Yeah, she's saying that if the person who is promoted knows or not, I mean, if this has any implication. Actually, when we studied this, we didn't take into account any psychological effect. Of course, psychological effect could be important, but actually the point is that you need to give rewards to those who are smart guy, who do a very good job, but you do not have to change their task. That's the point. So you can increase their salary or give more free time, but if you are good at something, it's better that you continue doing what you are doing because you are the best in that. And then it's much better that you choose in a random way from the others, because you can also discover new talents, for example. People who doesn't know that was good at that task. And then it's a method against corruption and against nepotism, for example. So it's a more democratic. And in fact, for example, concerning politics, election comes from elite. It's not really democracy.
Okay, we have time for one more question.
Over there. Yes. Yes. Actually, we have found that, for example, there is a company in Brazil who applies a similar strategy, not exactly what we propose, but a similar one. It means it's called SEMCO, and they actually have a very reduced hierarchy, and they rotate continuously the task of the people. But then another example is Google. In Google, you probably know that employees are paid to spend at least 20% of their time for personal projects. So it's this kind of bottom-up strategy that they can propose then to the company. And you know how successful is Google. So I think works. And also in science, of course, you have bottom-up strategies. And most of very important discoveries are just by chance.
Andrea Rapisarda.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just before we get to our final Ig Nobel Prize winner, I want to tell you about hair. Okay. This event, as you may or may not know, is sponsored, or at least endorsed, by the Luxuriant Flowing Hair Club for Scientists, the LFHCFS. The Luxuriant Flowing Hair Club for Scientists is now about 12 years old. It's a club for scientists who have luxuriant flowing hair. To become a member, you need just two things. You need to have luxuriant flowing hair, and you need to be a scientist. On our website, we have a special entry with a photograph for each of the members. There are about 500 members worldwide. You can nominate yourself. Some years, not every year, but some years at randomly chosen years, we choose a man of the year and a woman of the year. Here are a couple of them. One year we chose 3 men of the year. These are 3 Italian scientists on the left who also happen to be rock stars. They are members of a rock band. And everything was very happy with the club. Lots of scientists were joining, were pleased to be members. But then we started getting letters from people who were not so happy about things. People saying, you know, I would like to join this club. I used to have luxuriant flowing hair. Many years ago, I did have luxuriant flowing hair. I do not any longer, but is there no place for me in this club? And for years, we agonized about this, and we finally realized that there was a way to accommodate them. And so we started a sibling club, a sister club, brother club, call it what you will, called the Luxuriant Former Hair Club for Scientists, also the LFHCFS, and it's for scientists who once had luxuriant flowing hair. Here are some of the members, obviously. And everything was happy, everybody was pleased, and then we started getting letters from people who were upset, saying, I do not have luxuriant flowing hair on the top of my head, but I have some hair, and so I don't qualify for either of those clubs, but is there no place for me in your club? And we agonized, and then we finally came up with a solution. We started another club, another sibling club, the Luxuriant Facial Hair Club for Scientists, also called the LFHCFS. And all you need to join is luxuriant facial hair and to be a scientist. And everything was happy, and people were delighted. And several years went by, and then we started getting more and more letters from people who had been rejected when they tried to join the clubs because they did not meet one of the qualifications. They all had luxuriant flowing hair, or no hair, or facial hair, but they were not scientists. They, at least not technically, they were social scientists. And after getting enough of these and realizing that they too have their place in the world, of course, we started another sibling club, the Luxuriant Flowing Former or Facial Hair Club for Social Scientists. This is a photograph of the first member of that club. And since that time, we have had one additional club that started a few months ago. I was doing an event somewhat similar to this one in the Netherlands about 6 months ago, and one of the people who was involved on stage is the science editor of one of the big Dutch newspapers. It's a woman who has long, flowing blonde hair and is very proud of it. And on stage, she asked, couldn't there be a luxuriant flowing hair club for science journalists? And so on the spot, we decided that yes, there could. And there should, and now there is. And that woman became the first member, and now there are some others. So that's the basic story of the Luxuriant Flowing Hair Club for Scientists. We hope that if you are qualified, that you will think about joining. All you have to do is send us the basic information indicating you are a scientist, and also a photograph that demonstrates your hair or lack of it. And it's a pretty quick process, one way or the other. I am very pleased to be able to introduce to you one of the members of the Luxuriant Flowing Hair Club for Scientists, a scientist who is here at the University of Oslo. And of all of the members of the club, I believe the photograph in her member entry is the most glamorous photograph of any member of the clubs, and maybe of any scientist worldwide. Before I show you her photograph, I'll show you the current Woman and Man of the Year. But now it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Anneleen Kuhl. Please step up here. Okay. We'll load you up with equipment here, and let me get your
Thank you very much for having me here. I must say that the Luxuriant Flowing Hair Club for Scientists changed my career. I'm a botanist, and I work at the Botanical Garden here in Oslo. This is I was nominated for the Luxuriant Flowing Hair Club for Scientists. And I happily joined when I was nominated. This picture is when I was with a colleague in Jordan on a so-called efficiency excursion, where we were doing hard work, as you can see. Anyway, when I got to Oslo, my career changed towards something much more hairy than the botany I'm normally involved in. And that is the botany of the Viking Age. The Vikings, as we all know, are known for their raping and pillaging and trading, but also for their hairiness. So here you can see some hair in action in the Viking garden, in the Botanical Garden here in Oslo. And also it's fantastic as a counterweight when brewing beer and doing other Viking activities. I can really recommend long hair for this kind of activity. But I also feel that some early career scientists or people who would like just didn't grow their hair long enough yet should be able to compensate in some way. So I would like to propose another club, and that is the luxuriant flowery hair club for scientists. Or the luxuriant fake hair for scientists if we want to put in other things that are not flowers necessarily. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will discuss your suggestion, your request with the membership, and we will consider that. And just before we have our final Ig Nobel Prize winner, this is a great moment in science of a sort. We have a new member who just joined today of the luxuriant former hair club for scientists, a professor of mathematics at the University of Oslo. Please welcome, please congratulate, please admire the head of Professor Andreas Carlsen.
First of all, I have to say, Mark, thank you so much for thinking about me in this club. I feel truly honored to be part of it. And when I look into this great audience of people at the University of Oslo, I see truly great potential. I mean, I see flowing blondes and blank skulls. And yeah, I would encourage you all to join our fancy club. Thanks.
Thank you. A question. This may be something that should be a tradition. It may be something that should not be at all a tradition. But would you consent to allowing audience members to come down and rub your head?
At any time, but it costs a nickel.
Okay, here you have it. He's sitting right over here. Thank you. All right. And now, timekeepers, splendid work. Keep it up. Just one more speaker. It's my honor and pleasure to introduce to you the author, co-author, the lead author of the work that won an Ig Nobel Prize this past year, looking into the question of whether this gentleman from years ago was able to father 888 children. We all set on this?
Yes.
Please welcome Professor Elisabeth Oberzaucher.
Thank you. So the story sounds strange, but maybe you will understand why we did this after I tell you a little bit about it. So the limits of reproductive potential, they are different for men and women. And that's actually a very basic assumption for humans, and it affects us very strongly, especially in behavioral sciences, also in evolutionary psychology. This assumption that men can potentially have many more children than women can affects everything else we think about men and women, and how they interact, and how this whole thing with sexuality, mate choice, and so on works. So for us, it was really an important question to nail this down. Where are the limits? And basically, it is a complicated thing. So I like to ask my freshman class, what do you think? How many copulations are needed to actually sire a child, so that there is some offspring happening? And I do so also at some conferences where doctors, fertility specialists are attending, and usually the answers are quite different. So the fertility experts will say once, if you're very lucky. The students, you can guess now, I think, rather tend to say once, if you're very unlucky. But we all know once might not suffice, so we actually try to approach this problem from the opposite angle, meaning what is the upper limit of how many children can one man have. So we have some historic reports. I start with the female side. We don't know the name of the woman with the most or the highest number of children reported. It was the first wife of Fyodor Vasilyev, a Russian man who was married more than once. But the first wife is supposed to have had 69 children, which is amazing. Just think of this number of children. Giving birth to 69 children is something I don't want to go into detail. On the male side, we have another success story, and the numbers are different. Moulay Ismael is a Moroccan Sharif, and he was actually supposed to have 888 children. So why 888? This is the number that is reported in the Guinness Book of World Records. But for us biologists, a beautiful number usually is wrong. So we decided to dig deeper, and we found a historical source, which was actually a French ambassador who reported on Moulay Ismael, and he said that in 1704 he had 600 sons. So why 600 sons? Women were not only not important in this case, but the daughters of the concubines were not allowed to live, so they were actually killed at birth. So he is really not a nice guy. I'm very glad that all of us won't have to meet him, you know. So you will see a little more about his bloodthirstiness here. So he also sent off his concubines into retirement at age 30, but they were not free. They still were kept under soul confinement, as they were while they were still with Moulay in his actual harem. They were guarded very closely. If they were just suspected to have committed adultery, they were killed very crucially. Not crucially, but cruelly. I'm sorry. So it was crucial for Moulay to ensure his fatherhood. So the question was, can this be true? So we stuck to the historical facts. So he came into power at the age of 20, the report 1704, then he was 52, so we had 32 years of reproduction. And in these 32 years, we assumed that he had actually access to this huge harem. And he should have had sired approximately 1,200 children. You can calculate this, meaning 1,171, because more boys are born than girls. We then did this. I will, for matters of time, not read the whole poem to you, but it's a beautiful poem written by Lee van Walen. The biologists among you might know of Lee van Walen. He is responsible for the Red Queen hypothesis that actually explains to us why we bother having sex at all and why we don't reproduce asexually. So, beautiful computerized sex we did. Actually, we just did a computer simulation. It was, not very exciting. I mean, this is so much more exciting mathematics. We did basically a number of likelihood calculations. So here you see the model. We took all sorts of things into account: fertility of women, where in the cycle did he pick them, how was the quality of his sperm, how was it about child mortality, and we put everything into the model. And then we calculated, would it work? And this is the question: how much stamina would a man need? So how many copulations per day do you think a man would need for 32 years, every day? Every day. No weekends, no vacations, nothing. Every day. So Our results, if we take everything into account based on different models, it's something between once and twice a day. That's quite a bit if you think of no weekends, no holidays, 32 years. So quite a bit. But then the next question we asked was, how many women? Because this is another miracle, you know, or another big question. Is it really so that it's just the number of women that pose the upper limit? And we must say no. Look at this. So the harem size, we stopped the calculations at 200. So the harem of Moulay was far bigger, 500, somewhere here. But if you look at those curves, you see that we reach saturation far earlier. So for the 3 different conception models, we actually reach saturation somewhere between 60 and 110 women in his harem. And 500 was actually the size of his harem. So what we learned is that the limit of the reproductive potential is not, as we read in our textbooks, the number of women, but it actually is his manhood. So we then thought, okay, why did he take all these women into his harem? Why did he kill off all his daughters? And we came to the conclusion that this is probably not due to biological reasons, but more due to political reasons, because by removing all those women from the general mating pool, he generated a large number of unmated men, and those unmated men were good soldiers for his wars. Thank you.
Any questions? Just raise your arm. Repeat the question.
Is this research reproducible? Yes, of course it is. Since we did not really collect any data, I can say yes, of course. I'm actually at the moment working with a real mathematician to do some proper mathematical modeling rather than these, rather simple likelihood calculations.
May I ask a follow-up?
Yes.
How many male scientists and how many female scientists are necessary to reproduce this?
Well, you can't do this without me, of course. So, and yes, I'm actually ganging up with another male scientist again. So apparently there is something about male-female. Yeah.
More questions?
Yes, exactly. We did take into account the decline of sperm quality, and that's actually why we say, or why we think that Moulay Ismael is actually on the upper limit of male reproductive potential, because if a man ejaculates that often, he will basically, or even more often, I should say, he would basically sterilize himself. He would not have sperm count that would suffice to ensure fertilization.
Further questions?
We did take into account the synchronization of cycles. Yes, we did. And this would have had a lowering effect on his reproductive outcome. So in the general model, this is included, even though it's highly unlikely because sole confinement, they didn't really have so much time for social interaction for the pheromones actually to work. how do we know that he was the father of all these children? Well, given that he really went at lengths to ensure that no adultery would happen. So one funny bit I actually kept you ignorant of was that there was a special bell rung at the rare occasions a woman was allowed to leave the harem. So there was this bell carried in front of this closed, how do you call it? The carry thingy? Whatever. So before the woman there was this bell, and people actually had to fall down on the floor and put their faces into the dirt to ensure that they would not even look at the woman. So the measures were really, really rigid. So we can, I think, safely assume that the kids were his.
Okay. Any further questions? Thank you, Dr. Elisabeth Oberzaucher.
Thank you.
And thank you all. Especially would like to thank the math department for making this possible, and the library for making this possible. Our band, the people selling the beer, our timekeepers, wonderful job. Please take a bow. Our bacon volunteer, please take a bow if you're able to stand. And our Ig Nobel winners, please stand up. Okay. And I'll finish by saying the thing that I say, oh, if you have a paper airplane and you want to throw it, please. Wow. If you ever in your lifetime get a chance to stand in front of this many people while they're throwing paper airplanes at you, you will see an astounding sight. So the thing I want to say to you, it's the final thing I say at every Ig Nobel Prize ceremony, is if you did not win an Ig Nobel Prize this year, and especially if you did, better luck next year. Thank you. Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Så jeg håper alle hadde like artig som jeg har hatt I dag. Så jeg vil bare repetere noe av de tingene Marc sa. Tusen takk til Marc, Lisa, Carl, Andrea, Annelin, Egil. Men vi må også rette en spesiell takk til Realfagsbiblioteket, Matematisk institutt, det de som har sponset evenementet. Forskningsforbundet lager popcorn, og Realistforeningen de har noe da Bad Taste Party, eller hva det heter, Harry Party. Så altså, det blir ikke bare rett etter det, men det mulig å gå I kjelleren her og kjøpe seg øl. Jeg vil også rette en takk til de andre som har vært med organiserte. Yngvar Reichelt, Live Kvale, Live Rasmussen, Line Ankerholt. Og med det da, så håper dere for en fin kveld.
Hey. Thank you. Thank you. That was great.